Welcome to the 2 Acre Homestead podcast. We're your hosts, Kevin
and Lisa.
And on today's episode, we're talking about a storm that's brewing, and you may need to shelter in place. What do we mean? Let's get started.
Welcome to the 2 Acre Homestead. Come along with us on our journey from a small, suburban homestead lifestyle
to our new lifestyle, homesteading in the rural countryside of southern Arizona.
We'll share with you our tips, tricks, successes, and failures.
From both our past suburban lifestyle to our new rural lifestyle,
all on the 2 Acre Homestead. Welcome back to the show, everybody. We're happy to be back on air. For those of you who are loyal listeners, you probably know already by now through Instagram. But if not, I will let you know. We were off the air because we all have gotten whatever this flu, bug, whatever is going around. And I am just barely getting my voice back. So we're going to go a little bit easy on the talking, which I don't know how we're going to do that and do a podcast, but whatever.
Such is life.
It is. So we're super excited to be back on the air with you guys. But before we get talking about the storm that is brewing, we wanted to do a little bit of catching up. So Kevin, my wonderful husband of 20 years, happy anniversary, 20 plus years. What have you been up to?
Barn part 2. Seems like it's always part 2 or part 3.
I feel like you should say electric boogaloo at this point.
No. Anyway, that's the 80s, right?
Yeah, it is. You know, you have to be a certain vintage to get that joke. Sorry.
Right. So basically set up a second goat pen for the bucks, and then constructed a barn. So I had some help on that. My brother-in-law helped, and that was awesome. We were able to knock out some things. And he got on the roof, which was cool because if I got up there, I'd either fall or fall through. But fall is the common theme, but he really helps, so appreciate that. Just a little bit of finish work on that, not too bad. But today I set some posts in place. So basically we have a lane that goes between the two and then a common gate. So there's actually going to be like a U shape making 3 gates. So it's going to be pretty slick. I'm really excited about how that's going to be. So tomorrow I'll be able to take out the supports and then start putting at least the one gate that basically goes out to the field. And then that way it kind of encloses everything. So I'm really stoked about that. So, I think that's it. But what about you? What's new in your neck of the woods?
And then that's exciting too, because we will be getting, so for those of you who have been following us, our female goat, she gave birth to 2 bucks, and one died, one survived. So Junior is the one who survived. Now, Junior has half brothers. So the family that we got our goats from originally have the buck that got our doe pregnant, and he fathered 2 other bucks on their property, and they're all about the same age. So they're going to be coming and living on our property. So I'm really super excited about that. I'm happy for Junior.
Yep. Once that's all set up, then I'm going to be doing a smaller loafing shed next to it, next to the barn. It also is dual purpose. It gives us some privacy from a neighbor too. But it'll be nice because I need a better situation to store hay and the bedding that we put down in the barns and the floor. So that's going to be awesome. And I'm setting it up so when I pull the truck and trailer in with hay, because there'll be times where I'll probably fill the bed and the trailer. I'll be able to just pull right up, and then I'll have a common access door that I can go either in the goat yard if I want, or just load up, and it'll be a lot better. So
yeah,
I'm happy about that. So happy how it's coming together.
And it really does serve as a dual purpose, because we do have a next door neighbor that is difficult, to say the least.
Yeah, if you ever see our logo change to where it says 2 acre with the number 2 and then a small 0 next to it, that's our joke.
Yeah.
Hey, it's not bad being at 2 acres. But sometimes we just wish we had anyway.
And you know what? We did have every intention on this episode talking about how to deal with neighbors that are not pleasant to deal with. But we have decided that we're going to chair that episode. We're not going to air it verbally, but you will need to follow us, our newsletter, because we will be discussing that in detail in the newsletter, how to deal with neighbors that are challenging, especially when you're trying to homestead.
And if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, easiest way, just go to the 2acrehomestead.com and you can find the information on how to get to the newsletter there.
Exactly. And you can sign up there on our website. We don't spam you. We don't use your email for anything other than that. Yeah. So, I mean, it's completely free. There's no strings attached there, but we will be talking about that in the newsletter itself rather than talking about it verbally. Right. And that's mainly because we don't want to say anything that will tick off neighbors.
Right.
Because we are sandwiched between, we have really good neighbors on one side. And when I say really good, they stay to themselves. I think it's for religious reasons. We're not a part of that. We're not a part of their church, so they tend to stay away from us. And that's fine. That's totally fine. We have our beliefs, they have theirs, and that's okay. But they're very nice when we do deal with them. They're very pleasant, and we all seem to get along. But then we have this other neighbor that has no kids and is just cranky all the time. And so we don't want to say too much verbally, because we do know in our community there are those that listen to our podcast, so they may know precisely who we're talking about.
Right.
And we just want to make sure our words are guarded, and also that it is more beneficial for you to read it. And then you can, figure out what to do in your situation at that time. So That's just a brief PSA.
And so with things going on the way they are in the world and whatnot, we were talking of, what we were going to talk about this episode, and this topic came up. That's why we decided, let's talk about this instead. So with, things have been kind of brewing and, in the news and so on, financial, or, are we in a recession and all that? But we're not going to get too much into that. And we definitely don't want to get into anything political, but there's concern out there.
Lots.
Interest rates are way up. It hit over 8%, right? The average over 8%.
Yeah, for mortgages, yes.
For mortgages. Mm-hmm. There's uncertainty, at least. You hear on one end, jobs are good. There's a lot of jobs, but then you hear about layoffs. So anyway, there's uncertainty somewhat. And there's been talk. We've read things. Is there going to be a major crash? Is there going to be something going on end of this year, next year, whatever? But there's uncertainty. And I was thinking about looking at some of our podcasts, the stats, and I think some of the most popular ones, I think our very first episode was about how to start homesteading, right?
It was one of our first.
One of our first. And, that had quite a bit, thousands of downloads. And I think people even now are still thinking about that.
People still reference those episodes, and I still get emails, direct messages on Instagram,
Right.
with follow-up questions. Do you have any more information? Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that we were thinking about is if you haven't started homesteading and you're thinking about doing that, those individuals, maybe you're looking to move to a property where you can do that easier than where you're at right now, but it may not be a possibility. So for those of you that are in that situation, because of maybe what you might have to qualify for to buy said property, or what income you might have to buy said property, maybe you're in the situation where this is not the time. So one of the things we were thinking about is talking about this storm, we're going to call it, this uncertainty. There may be some more potentially bad stuff that happens, especially economically. What do you do? So how can you make the situation work for you where you're at? So that kind of comes into play, the wording shelter in place. Right. So do you have some thoughts to maybe start off with that?
So what I think first is we really need to define what we mean by the storm. So the storm that I think everybody collectively is looking at is a financial storm, because you have not only, and this is not to get too buried into the weeds, but you know, if you turn on the news, if you hear the news, if you're here in the United States, I can only speak to the United States. I don't know other economies. I'm laughing in the background because I wish you guys were here. Our dog Coda, she's old and stuck in her ways, and she just farted because it's like, whoa, she just let one go. Anyway, let's get back to something more serious. So the economic storm that we are all collectively facing is, as of the recording of this, today is Thursday, October 19th. And the 10-year bond rate is almost at 5%. I'm going to get back to that in just a second. But mortgage interest rates are at now 8%. And I believe I had said we're going to be at 8%. That is, if you got a mortgage last year or even the year before, your mortgage interest rate for a 30-year was probably, if you had good credit, was probably somewhere in the 3s. And now a person trying to qualify for a mortgage is going to get, with good credit, somewhere in the 8% range. That's a huge difference.
That's almost 3 times the percentage rate. Exactly.
And because I came from the mortgage industry professionally, you know, if you're looking to buy a house, let's just averaging out numbers, you're looking at something, $420,000 loan, you're easily going to have to make $120,000 annually to be able to qualify for that mortgage. That's huge. A lot of people can't qualify. So that's part of the storm that we're looking at. The 10-year bond is very extremely important to monitor that rate. And the reason why is the government, the U.S. government, and also financial institutions can use the bonds. They use bonds to borrow money. And the higher the interest rate is on the bond means the higher you're going to be paying on any sort of serviceable loan. So whether that's a mortgage loan like we just talked about, credit card debt, car payments, all of those type of any debt like that, which we don't recommend that you get into anyway, but any debt like that is going to be a lot more expensive for you to borrow against. And because the 10-year bond is starting to shoot up, that also calls into question bank. And I'm talking like your regular banks, your Wells Fargo, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, Sachs, Goldman Sachs, all of those banks. Now it's starting to call into question their solvency. And what do we mean by solvency? Because that's a fancy word. In other words, are they financially stable enough to handle these higher rates? Because banks also borrow money as well.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Are you looking to build a homestead from the ground up? Or maybe you're looking to build an off-grid dream home, a vacation home, or maybe just a piece of land to call your own. Visit yourcheapland.com to buy rural land in the wide open spaces of southwestern United States. When you visit yourcheapland.com, they're here to help you, and with their help, you can do this. You can take your dream of owning land and make it a reality. Most down payments are only $294, including the document fee. Remember, everyone qualifies for financing at yourcheapland.com. Head on over to yourcheapland.com and start making those dreams come true. And now, back to our podcast.
And on top of that, I think you mentioned earlier when we were kind of talking about this a little bit before, getting ready, is the banks now are required to have a bit more cash on hand.
2%.
2%. So for instance, I go to the bank, I give them $100 cash. Of course, they're going to invest that. I remember when I was a kid, I learned that they don't just keep your money in a little safe, right? They actually use it and invest it and so on, right? And back then, I remember, I don't know, we were getting 4 or 5% at that time. Of course, until recently, it had been a lot lower. But anyway, so they invest it and so on. But now they're required. So in that $100 that I put in, they're required to put $2 in the safe, keep it, and then they can do the rest how they want.
Exactly.
But that's higher than what they were required to before.
Right. And, and I think it's really important for those of us who are in the homesteading community. I wish I had a bullhorn to shout this from the rooftops, but especially to those of us who are homesteaders, just keep in mind everything that you've been taught financially is wrong. Everything. If you're going based on what you were taught in school, trash it, because it's just not. It's not what's going to get you through storms like this. What's going to get you through storms like this is paying off your debts, staying out of debt. If you are debt free, cash. Save your money, turn your money into tangible assets. Just remember, there's one rule. If you get nothing out of this, take this and think about it. If you do not hold it, you don't own it. If you do not hold it, you do not own it.
Well, three words proved that not too long ago, right? Silicon Valley Bank was one.
Exactly. So, we've been taught, put your money in the bank and, let it collect interest. Well, right now, yes, it is collecting interest. But see, it calls again into question bank solvency. Can banks afford to keep paying out this interest? I'll give you an example. There was something in MSN or CNBC News today. Not that I'm a huge fan of theirs, but CNBC, they had talked about how banks are quietly letting people go. They're quietly reducing the amount of staff that they have. Do you think it's because they're reducing the amount of staff that they have because, they want to get into technology and let AI handle? No, No, that's not it at all. Payroll is the most expensive thing for any business. I don't care if you're government, I don't care if you're private sector, whatever you are, payroll is the most expensive thing. If they can get rid of people, they can save money. And when people start looking at reducing their payroll, guess what? That's an indicator trouble is afoot. There's some sort of financial trouble.
And then if they're not reporting it, if it's coming out, they're not announcing it and whatnot, then...
Well, banks are required to report that quarterly.
Oh, okay.
But yes, they are reporting that, and they're doing it quietly. So that tells you something about bank solvency. So, like I said, if you take nothing out of this, just if you don't hold it, you don't own it. So, but then the other storm that we also have brewing is not only is it just the bank solvency and the interest rates on things going up, but then there's also the threat of war that is, there's a lot of saber rattling, and that also affects things financially as well. So basically, bottom line, all of this translates into people cannot move. Where you are is where you are right now. And,
And then some people, student loans were coming due in October, November timeframe.
Right.
And there's been things in the news too that those individuals now they're going to have to pay an extra hundreds or whatnot, whatever it ends up being for them. And now they're worried because for 2+ years, they didn't have to worry about those payments. And then all of a sudden,
now
extra amount they've got to pay on that. Plus probably all the credit card debt and other things, maybe car loans.
And there's an elephant in the room that nobody's talking about. It's not a big elephant. It's a baby elephant, but it's going to become a bigger issue. Not this year. And when I say not this year, I mean as in April 17, 2024. You're now going to know what I'm talking about. But it's going to become a big issue April 17, 2025, and that is taxes, because property taxes are going up. And because of the sable rattling for war, taxes in general are going to start going up. I can almost guarantee you. Why do I say that with confidence? I say that because that is how the government, that's how they make money. So you have, and again, this is not to be political, because honestly, well, I'm not going to say what we think about politics.
Well, we try to stay
but
politically
we stay
neutral.
Politically neutral because it's just, anyway.
Yeah.
I voted for Jesus. That's who I vote for. But anyway, taxes are going to be going up because you cannot say, Janet Yellen just recently said, and she just, Treasury Secretary just recently said that the U.S. can afford to pay for 2 wars. No. And I'm not saying no because I'm trying to be political, but if you look at what the tax revenue is that the U.S. government has been taking in and what they are spending out, the U.S. government is in a deficit. We all know it. Everybody knows that. So where is this money going to come from? If they print more money, then that means inflation. You hear the word inflation all the time. Inflation is going to go through the roof. Why? It's basic economics. It's economics 101. If you went to college and you took economics 101, you know what I'm going to say. The more money you print, that means more people have access to that money. And the more money that's printed, the more goods are going to be consumed, and the more goods, the more demand and the less product you've got. Inflation is just going to start going through the roof again. That's how we're in this situation now, is because of printing money. So if they print money to get themselves out or to support all of these wars, then that means it's going to be higher inflation here. If they don't, if they've learned their lesson and said, you know what, let's not print any more money. Okay, then how are we going to support all of this? That means taxes are going to go higher. So that's the baby elephant. I'm calling taxes a baby elephant in the room because what that means is property taxes, yeah, they're going to go up. It's not going to hit this. It's not going to hit this coming tax season. It's the following tax season that it's really going to bite everybody.
So it's not a good situation to be in.
Right.
So practically speaking, what could you do if that's the situation that you're in where you need to stay where you are, make do with what you have, homestead? What are some practical things that we could talk about? Well, one thing is, we try our best to do this. Grow as much as you can of what you're going to eat. So it's not just veggies from the garden, but it's also producing meat on the homestead. As an example, for a number of years, what's it been, 8 years, I think, we've had chickens. Mm-hmm. So we go for dual purpose birds now. And the reason is we like having eggs, making eggs for breakfast. Sometimes it's good feeding the dogs, especially when we hear things like shortages on dog food. Mm-hmm. That can help support us. And real easy to do. So that's one thing I would recommend. Learn the basics of how do you raise chickens. I would say dual purpose. Something like a leghorn, for example. Now you could go to the hatcheries. You could, go ahead and maybe get a few, but you can also look locally. Because one thing that we've been trying to do over the years is avoid relying on the hatcheries.
Right.
Because there's been problems and so on, but also you're getting off that reliance, that whole thing. So you could even look locally. We don't really like to promote Facebook that much, but Facebook Marketplace is probably one place. You could find people locally that might have, eggs that you could get, and then you could hatch them.
That are fertilized.
Fertilized. So another recommendation I would make is invest in a good incubator. Because that's something that we started doing. And every 6 months, maybe or so, that what you could do is you can start incubating eggs that you're producing on your homestead. And that's going to help you get off that reliance of relying on the hatcheries every so often. The mindset on that is because with your hens, their layers especially, 2 years is probably the cutoff point, because once you get to 3 and 4 years, their production starts to wane. Another thing you got to think about too is in the summer months, especially here in Arizona, when it gets hotter, their egg production's going to go down. But after 2 years or so, that's probably the time where you want to start thinking about culling for meat. And then, earn your stripes on that. Learn what goes into how to cull animals for, or your chickens for food. Real beneficial for us because we fill the freezer and that fed us for quite some time. And then I know you are real good at with canning and so on. So you've made broth, and we've tried to use every part of that chicken.
That's what I was going to say. Use the whole animal.
Use the whole animal. So for the dogs, for example, we fed them the heads, we fed them the innards, and
make sure all of it's cooked.
Yeah, make sure all of it's cooked.
Chop it up with a little bit of rice. There you go. Instant dog food. Green beans. You've got instant dog food.
Yep. Use the feet in stock.
Yep.
Right.
Chicken stock. Yep.
So, and then of course the eggs that you eat off of for your family, and then then when you use those eggs for food yourself, then save the eggshells, save all the vegetable scraps. Sometimes some of the meat, you don't want to feed your chickens chicken. That's
that's wrong.
But feed them beef, feed them some of the scraps there. Feed them all the leftover vegetable scraps and whatnot, rice. And then that's going to help you produce more eggs.
So let me just let me just put this in a different way for our listeners. Basically what you're trying to say is learn the cycles and learn how to create what we like to call around here a closed loop system. And that closed loop system is being able to produce your own meat as much as you possibly can. If you have just a scrap of land, just a little bit of a backyard, if you're able to have chickens are a really good way to learn that cycle of, try to provide them as much as you possibly can with food, your leftover scraps. If you've got kids, your kids, I'm talking about the little kids, your littles, they're not going to clean off their plates. Okay. I mean, we just all know that's
if it's not a snack, right?
Yeah. If it's not a snack, that's just how little people are. So you can take the majority of those scraps and feed that to your chickens. Your chickens are going to produce your eggs. You can in turn eat the eggs, obviously bake with it, cook with it, whatever you want to do. Save the eggshells, combine that with coffee grounds, and then you've got something that's going to fertilize your gardens. Mm-hmm. Save that for a couple months and then sprinkle that on your gardens. Mm-hmm. There you go. You've got instant fertilizer for your gardens. You don't have to go out to the grocery store or the feed store or whatever store that you're going to go to get some sort of soil amendment. You don't have to go do that. You've already got it there.
And you can compost simply. We started one time with the city. Basically, they had these, I think they're 90-gallon barrels, maybe 100 gallons. But anyway, cut the bottoms off, stick it in the ground.
Yeah, there you go.
And start putting some scraps in there, some coffee grounds. You can get them free sometimes from coffee shops. Basically, you need nitrogen, water, and air. Mm-hmm. And then you mix
green material.
Right? And green, so green material, brown material. Mm-hmm. Good to go, and you can add that to your garden beds.
Right. And then what you're talking about with chickens, if you're going to spend money, spend it on an incubator. Mm-hmm. Because likely if you're in a suburb, if you're in suburbia, I can almost guarantee you can't have a rooster. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. So what you do is you go on to Facebook, you look for somebody that, selling fertilized eggs. Go ahead, get those fertilized eggs because you're going to get them cheap. Incubate them, hatch out your own chickens. Just know you're probably going to get mostly roosters, because it's just how nature works in the chicken world. They produce, roosters are more dominant than hens. So, you're going to cull your roosters. Don't try to we've hatched out these roosters, they're growing, and so now I've got to go find them a home. No, their home is in your freezer.
In your pot, yep.
Yeah, in your pot or in your freezer. That's where their home is. So start learning how to take care of that. Use the whole chicken, and then whatever is left over gets composted. And there is that cycle. Mm-hmm. There you've got that continuous cycle. You can do the same thing with rabbits. Obviously, rabbits don't produce eggs, but rabbits, that's a completely different thing, but very similar. You can feed them scraps. You have to be very careful with what you're feeding them, but you can feed them. Their poop can go into your garden, which can in turn feed them again. And it's just this nice continuous little cycle. And if you let them mate, if you get a girl, a buck and a doe, let them mate, you can now start eating, you can let the kits or the baby rabbits, you can let them grow, you can harvest them, or you can use them for dog food if you want, or whatever you're going to do with that. But you can harvest that, and then they can just keep producing.
And they're actually easier to harvest than chickens.
Absolutely. Anything that has fur is just way easier to harvest than anything that has feathers, for sure. But the point is that learning how to produce your own meat and your own vegetable. You're not going to be able to produce all of it yourself, but learn how to grow.
Start with, what do we eat a lot of?
Start with where you're at. You know, if times are tough right now, so learn how to do things on the cheap. Learn how to homestead inexpensively. And I think we talked about this in depth on a different episode, but you know, there are other things that you can do. Like, for example, you know, people start thinking about gardening and the first thing that comes to their minds is, oh, well, you know, I need to build these raised garden beds. No, you don't. You don't need to start building raised garden beds. As a matter of fact, I kind of recommend that you don't. Planting in ground is a really inexpensive way to start gardening. You've got lots of stuff going on under that soil, the good guys and the bad guys. Feed the good guys, feed your soil, help your soil to be very rich by doing exactly what we just said. Add coffee grounds to it, add leaf mulch,
chips.
Add wood chips, add free things. You can even take cardboard and just break that down into the soil. Start composting. The best time to plant a tree and the best time to start composting was yesterday. So let that be your first thing that you start doing. Start composting.
Some grocery stores, they have spent produce.
Absolutely.
One thing that we took advantage of where we lived near downtown Phoenix was spent produce. And basically they were going to throw it away. Well, why? It was 2 huge bags every few weeks or whatnot. And that provided a lot of good
compost. My goodness. And here's a pro tip for you on that. Go to those health food stores, like those super uber healthy health food stores that sell produce. I don't know about Whole Foods, but I know we had like different stores that were local to our area. We went to those health food stores, and they were always willing to give us their spent produce all the time. Or you know what? Collect leaves. We're heading into fall. Trees are losing their leaves.
Yep.
Hey, can I collect some of your leaves? People are going to look at you crazy, but you know what? Who cares?
Grass clippings.
Contact
a school.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you do with that? They collect it, they bag it, right?
Exactly. See if you can collect that. Do things like that on the cheap. You don't have to do things expensive, but learn how to do those type of things. The other thing I would recommend as far as like homesteading and learning how to homestead is not only just producing your own food, but also learning how to not use wasteful things. For example, I feel funny saying this because I just bought a bunch of paper towels, but for example, you can cut out paper towels. You don't have to have paper towels. I mean, I like having them, but when we started our homesteading journey initially, we cut paper towels out. We didn't need to have paper towels. We don't really even to this day, but we do have older dogs who have accidents every now and again.
They're beneficial for certain uses.
For certain uses, they are. But, if it wasn't for our dogs, honestly, we wouldn't need them because we use cloth everything. So learn to cut out things like that. Learn how to get in your kitchen and cook from scratch. Use the entire animal. Use everything that you produce on your homestead. Don't let anything go to waste.
Even small steps can make a big difference. And of course, if it's something that is new for you to get into, that's the best thing to do, right? If it's like somebody who needs to exercise, if they're going to go run 5 miles one day, how are they going to keep that up if that's not their routine?
If they don't die from a heart attack first.
A little bit at a time.
Exactly.
Right? And then you'll add more things as it becomes your routine.
Right. And the other thing is, from the financial perspective, is get yourself out of debt. Do whatever. I mean, this is our second time saying this, but we really do mean this. Whatever you can, get yourself debt free. It's okay to have a little bit of a credit card balance. Those things happen, but as long as you have the money to pay it off immediately, that's fine. But don't get yourself into so much debt that you can't pay things off. That's the type of debt that we're talking about. If you can't pay it off, that's what being in debt is. If you cannot pay it off, it is a debt. And realize that while you're going through the storm, you need to change your mindset. We said earlier, everything that we've learned about in school is wrong. For example, most Americans, some of you I know are in other countries because we see the statistics. So some of you are going to be like scratching your head saying, okay, but to our American audience, what we're taught in school is that our homes are an asset. Now, I used to be an accountant. My whole working career has either been in finance or accounting, which, by the way, are two different worlds. But that's been my whole working experience. And I can tell you right now that your house, even if you own it free and clear, your house will never be an asset. Your house is always a liability because it takes money to maintain it, even if you own it free and clear without a mortgage, because there are still maintenance and repairs that are always going to have to be done. So we have to get out of our minds that our home is an asset. If you stop paying your taxes on your home, even if you own it free and clear, if you stop paying your taxes, guess what's going to happen in about 4 years? They're going to take it over. They're going to take it away from you. So we have to change our mindset and stop thinking that this is my land or this is, that this is my asset. It's not an asset. It's a liability. But what you want to do is you want to limit your liability. You want to live in such a way that your home doesn't suck you dry. Okay. So we have to change our mindset and we have to really look at reducing the liability. So living in your home, making sure your home is fit and tidy, things are repaired, things are in good working order, so that it doesn't suck you dry. Keep up on the maintenance of your home, even if you own it free and clear, especially if you own it free and clear, because you really don't want that liability, which is what a home is. You don't want your liability to drain you financially, especially in times like this.
Yeah, so good advice. I think this is a really good topic, especially for this time that we're talking about. Again, when we're recording this, it's near the end of October 2023. Mm-hmm. So, you can do it. You can get through this time period. Hopefully we don't know. We'll have to see as time goes on, right?
Right.
So, and this is, like we said, this has been an important topic. We see a lot of people show interest that have listened to our podcast. This is a topic that people coming back to, wanting to get into homesteading. The things we've talked about, like you mentioned, how to do it cheaply or inexpensively. And those topics are why we kind of keep coming back to that same type of subject.
Yeah, how to do it more inexpensively. And you know what, you guys, if you've listened this long, let us know via email or on Instagram via direct message. Let us know if you want us to go, if you really want us to take a deep dive into how to homestead, how to start homesteading, inexpensively. I know we've done an episode on this, but we try to keep our episodes to a certain length of time. So if we really need to take a deep dive into this, and this is something that you guys really want us to like parse out and really get into the weeds on this, this is something that I think you and I could really do, because this is exactly how we started homesteading. Because when we started homesteading, we were financially not in a good place financially. And so taking a turn, I think at that point I just lost my job. You know, it just was a hairy time. So, you know, what we did was with very limited funds. So if this is something that you guys really want us to talk about in depth, please let us know via email. You can email me directly, Lisa, at the2acrehomestead.com, or instant message us on Instagram at the 2acre homestead.
Okay, sounds really good. So we want to thank you again for your support. Again, check out our website as well, the2acrehomestead.com. So from all of us here to all of you out there,
happy homesteading.
And stay safe out there.
Bye.